Hello, welcome to a Leader's Journey podcast. I am not Joel Gunn. I'm going to be your guest host today. I am Brent Fessler. And today we have the privilege of speaking with Mike Morehouse. Mike is a good friend of mine. We've gotten to know each other working in the same space here, so we cross paths a lot. And I have just enjoyed our conversations. We find ourselves not getting work done, or at least I do, and just having these great conversations. I love to nerd out on leadership or business and everything in between, from coffee to space. So we talk about it all. But Mike is Vice President of Production at Veterans Lending Group. And Mike, welcome to the show today.
Oh, great to be here, Brent. Appreciate it. And just for the record, I'm always working. I'm always working. So
let the record show. We appreciate that. Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, about your family and education history, so we get to know you a bit.
Yeah, originally I grew up in Mexico. My parents honeymooned in Mexico and stayed for 15 years. So that was one of the things that was great is I had a little bit of a different upbringing. As we moved to the States, moved to California, up Central Valley, my dad was in the produce box business, so got to work on farms. So my education actually started at 11 years old. I started working in packing sheds, doing very mundane tasks. So I look at that as probably the best part of my education. From a schooling perspective, did well all the way through. Went to college, became self-employed at 18. Started my own manufacturing business, and through some different things, I ended up getting into the mortgage business, where I met my wife.
Nice.
And that was 40 years ago.
Wait, so talk to me about what an 18-year-old is going to be manufacturing. Right?
Growing up in the packing sheds.
Besides trouble, right?
Well, that was part of it. But in the packing sheds, they have this they have seasons. So tomato packing season runs a particular time, and there's maintenance work that gets done. So I started out doing the maintenance work, and then I started manufacturing little pieces for packing sheds, and then I started making box making machines and different things. By the time I was 22, I had quite a few box making machines that I ended up making, folder gluers. It was one of my ambition is to own my own business and do that. But, halfway through, I started realizing that I was missing out on a few things. I was working 7 days a week. So I had an opportunity to get out of the business and got in the mortgage business because somebody made this promise that you get to work all you want, make as much money you want, and it's really easy. Which was the first lie that about the business.
Well, the first part was probably true. You get to work all you want.
Yeah. No, and you do. But I was very fortunate. I met my wife at the first company that we're at. And so we've been married for 37 years. We have 2 daughters. And so everything's really good, actually.
Okay, so 37 years of marriage. I'm sure this will cross over with some leadership, but give us one nugget on how you make it to 37 years.
My wife is probably very tolerant. I think, that's honestly it. I think, if all of us really look at it, we all generally, men always marry up. I definitely did. So I think she's got a lot of grace.
Yeah. Or she'd seen you in the workplace, so she kind of knew what she was getting into. It was like, eh.
Yeah, and she still married me.
And she still married you?
She did. That's surprising.
Yeah. So you've been in the mortgage business for some decades then?
40 years in January.
40 years in January. Yeah. Wow, that's great. So you're 45 now. So.
I act 12 most of the time, but yes, I am 45.
That's fantastic. Well, I look forward to pulling out some of our conversations that we've had. This is a leader's journey, so I'd love to talk about leadership. I think, we always think that we're living in a time that's different than all the other times, and in some sense it's true. In other senses it's not. Some things never change. But we are certainly in a new season, depending on how you look at it. And so talk to me about how you feel like leadership might be changing, and is it just a good idea to change, or is something really causing some of that change? And
Yeah, I have an article that I started writing. The working title is "Everything has Changed and Nothing's Changed," and it actually is sort of a way for me to try to get my thoughts on paper about leadership, and actually it's just business in general. I think the environment has changed. I mean, the environment's always been very ruthless. The market's ruthless for companies, organizations, and people that don't marshal the resources well. And I think what's changed is the environment that we're working in is much more dynamic. And I know that's an overused word, but if you think about the pace of change, it's gone up exponentially. Expectations from our employees, our peers, our superiors have changed, and it has a lot to do with the way that the market is. And so I think that you look at that external environment, and there's a lot of things that are affecting it. But the core things that haven't changed are real simple items, which is the ability to build trust, to be able to provide value, and to be useful. And I was just going through. I think I shared with you that I did a lecture up at a university up in the Dallas area, and they asked me to speak about leadership as it pertained to one of the majors that they had, and it was leadership, trust, communication, and then sort of job fit. And it sort of forces you every time that you have to do something. As you know, you've got to go back and try to put something down on paper and try to be articulate about it versus something that just is bouncing around your head. And so when I look at leadership today, and from my own experience, and going back to having my own business, we could do things, and there was some stability to the course. That I'm going to do this. It's going to be good for insert 6, 7 months, 9 months, a year. That isn't that way anymore. And so what we've introduced, I think, with this incredible economy that we're in, I mean, it's still good. Still, a lot of people don't feel that way, but I think we've got a really dynamic economy and a lot of technology that's out there. There's a lot of changes, but it's introduced a lot of extra noise, uncertainty in what's going to happen. The ability for an industry or a particular vertical to pivot quickly is magnified. So I think from a leadership perspective, the top-down leadership is going away. The old hierarchical leadership is going away. And I think we're moving more to a distributed problem-solving model, which is, if you're CEO, a leader, department manager, I think you've got to go to a point where you're providing goals, objectives for people. You're trying to understand, your staff, what are their capabilities, their skill sets. And I don't want to use the term support because I think that's not really good enough, but you have to provide the framework or that ecosystem for them to be able to thrive. And I think that has been the major change. With that, leaders have had to evolve, and some have and some haven't. Some have confused agility with being chaotic. So I think those are some of the challenges.
Yeah. So maybe let's pause for a second. There's a couple of things I want to come back to, but I'd love to hear you paraphrase what leadership is. Because that's one of the things when you study leadership. About as many people as you talk to, that's about as many definitions of leadership you have, and there's certainly some overlap there. But I'm curious, especially as we're talking about leadership here. I want to know where you're coming from with it.
I think, and I try to simplify things because I'm a pretty simple guy in a lot of ways. I think leadership, my definition would be the ability to align people around a strategic plan, motivate them, and continually renew that plan, that organization. And it's about alignment. Now, there's other things underneath leadership, trust, communication, things like that. But at a very high level, it's about providing the direction to somebody. What are the goals? What are the objectives? Where they fit in that particular, equation, and then how are you going to get there, and what are you going to measure?
Yeah. So there's a inferring of movement. You talked about a plan. You talked about direction, getting there. Mm-hmm. So there's we're here, but we need to be there. Or we want to go there. Or want to get somewhere. and you kind of let off a conversation with trust or uncertainty. Mm-hmm. And do you see those as kind of opposite ends of, you've got trust and uncertainty? Are those related?
Yeah, when you think about trust, there's a part of the lecture that I ended up doing is there's a I'll call it a sort of sequence that I look at from a leadership perspective. I call it CUT, K-U-T, knowing an individual. So you and I know each other. The first time we met, we exchanged pleasantries, maybe a little bit of background, which is sort of that first stage. Understanding is really where I think you gain, sort of the rubber meets the road, and that is where you've got to have the ability to have interactions, prove competency, maybe some constructive conflict, and all those interactions, those experiential things with people, and then that leads to trust. So when I talk about trust, it's really either going to be at a one-to-one level, people, person to person, or it may be in an organization. I mean, you've got sort of this larger trust level. So trust internally I think is going to be very critical. The uncertainty, I think, has a lot to do with the environment that you're in, and some of it is really good. In fact, I think you need uncertainty because if everybody's comfortable, it leads to mediocrity. It leads to bureaucracy. There's all of these things that eventually will kill you, and the landscape's littered with Blockbuster, Kodak. I mean, you name it. They were comfortable. So I think that uncertainty that's out there is really good for us as long as we're prepared for it. There's got to be this tension.
Or to your model, to know about it and to understand it.
Yeah.
Right. If we don't know about if we don't understand the uncertainty, and I'm thinking through myself or anyone else, like as soon as somebody's uncertain, something's changed, what do? Stop.
Exactly.
And I don't want to move because I don't know what my next step, if it's going to be a good one or a bad one, and let me understand. And it may still be a bad environment, but once I understand the environment, now I feel confident in moving. It may not be comfortable yet, but it just struck me as you were talking about uncertainty and trust, and how as soon as somebody's uncertain about something, they freeze, tend to, or at least slow down, right? And your work with people, or as we're leading people, maybe double click on that a little bit, and have you seen that in your own experience where people who are uncertain, they haven't passed through the knowing and the understanding, much less of the trust, and how what have you done maybe to earn some of those things, but and maybe observing other leaders who haven't gone through that process too. Just give us a couple of thoughts or stories on that.
Yeah, it happens every day, and I think that one of the things that if you're going to end up leading people, and I think it's important, everybody leads. It could be peer to peer. We all are a leader at one point or another.
Even our customers, right?
Our absolutely, customers are, and everybody gets a chance to lead at one time. And you just have to recognize that you're a leader, and there's certain things that you can do. So, when there's uncertainty, I try to work with mental models. It makes it easy. We're, as human beings, we're pattern matchers. If we have a process to go through to gain clarity, I think it's really important. So, one of the things that I do is, something's uncertain, and is it one of the vital few things that we're doing versus a worthwhile many? So you try to rank it. Is this really going to make a difference? Yes or no? And if the answer is yes, then what are you going to do? And I use the term, you want to step back and try to be as unemotional about it as possible, and really do an assessment. If you don't feel comfortable with it, I think you've got to bring somebody in. And this is where the trust part comes in. You may be, let's say you and I work together, and you're having a problem in your department, I'm one of your peers. If you and I have a great trust level, you're going to feel free to and open to talk to me about it. And it's one of those things that I think is really critical in organizations, is the ability to have, I don't like the word vulnerable because it sounds soft to me, but the way that I describe it is I think you have to be open for feedback.
Maybe courageous.
Courageous, I think, is actually probably a great word because it certainly takes that the first 2 or 3 times you do it. And especially if the other person doesn't reciprocate well, you have to go back for more. But it is going through a process. So if something's uncertain, you sort of break it down. Is it important? Yes or no? Because a lot of times there's some uncertainty and it doesn't have a significant impact. But if it does, then you break it down. You look at the components of what's uncertain. If you have the tools for being able to solve it, great. If not, reach out. If you don't have somebody to reach out to, you've got to learn something. And the worst thing you can do is don't make a decision or don't make a movement of any kind. And I think I don't recall the exact quote, but no decision is a decision. Yeah. And if you look at companies, and I go back to the Kodaks and Blockbuster, right? They really didn't make a decision. It goes back to they were successful, complacency, bureaucracy. And that applies, whether it's a person or a business, it's the same thing.
Kind of like a rudder on a ship that's not moving doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, if we look back at personally, a lot of times, we regret most the things that we didn't do or the decisions we didn't make. I mean, I look back at that and I go, if I ever regret, I should have done that, or I should have said this to a person.
So what if I'll propose a little modification to your CUT framework where the T becomes test, right? So know, understand, and then go and test to build the trust. Yeah. You don't just say, trust me now that you know and understand it, but how do you actually trust it?
I've tried that, but it doesn't work.
Except, yeah, right. So now I know and understand, so now let's go move into it. Let's make a decision. Let's move into it. And that's where the trust comes. Even if we didn't understand correctly, we didn't know fully, the testing it is what builds trust. Either way, either way, you're going to figure it out. You build a prototype. This isn't going to be the final thing, but you try it out.
Yeah, and if you go to going back to the trust, it's an iterative process. Interactions between people, organization, departments. There's the experiential part of it. Demonstrated competency is definitely, and it doesn't mean that you have to be the smartest. It means you're going to be competent in some area. It could be something technical. It could be maybe somebody's wise, but competency. And then I think there's a piece that is really critical, and that is that you do things, whoever's doing this is doing it with the right intentions. You've got to think critically but act virtuously in interactions with people. And I think that's where you break trust. A lot of people can think very critically, but they don't act in a virtuous sense. They're either in it for themselves or otherwise. But I think that is one of those components. If you can get that down, you're going to have people that will trust you, and you can be trusted.
So you're to lead people well. There's lots of things that they need to trust, and so I love your CUT sequence, because I need you to trust me as a leader. So you need to know me a bit, understand me, and test me out. And if I'm not a virtuous person, then you may know what I've told you and understand that, and then you test me out, and your experience is something different. So now now I know not to trust you as much. That's what my experience has taught me. Same thing with a plan, right? Our strategy. Here's our strategy. Know it, understand it. Let's go test it out. Let's execute on it. And that didn't work, or whatever it is, right? So I love this approach. Know, understand, test, trust. That's the modified version.
We'll trademark that. We'll two T's.
We will. I was going to make it my own. So.
Okay.
I'll give you a
little byline down at the bottom.
Yep, inspired loosely by Mike Morehouse. But I love the iterative process too, because you don't just say, "Oh, I've got trust and I'm good to go. Now I can keep going." So I love that you hit on the iterative nature of building trust in the leadership. Talk a little bit. I think as leaders, we tend to think that we're the ones who need to know the most and understand the most, and then I trust myself, and so I'm only going to experience my own trust. Talk about the importance of leaders, if it's important, to now translate knowledge and understanding to maybe if we're leading kids, it's maybe different. But if we're leading adults, high-performing adults, in your experience, how have you seen this importance of transferring that knowledge?
I think it's critical, and I think this is one of the transitions between, I'm just going to say, the older style top-down where you had certain people that had information and they could impart their expertise, right? And it depends on the size of the company too. If you're own a company with 5 people, whoever's running it might be able to be the expert and not have to impart too much because there's a lot of interaction. But if we looked at it in maybe a more generic sense, I think that the most important thing you can do is to take everybody at every level and make them as competent as possible. And competency, not just, hey, they know their job, but it's soft skills, people skills, all of those things. Because and this is part of the changed environment. Things are happening much quicker. Information there's more information out there than you've ever had. I mean, I can't remember the exact amount of data, how much it's gone up, but it's at such an exponential basis and everybody's got the ability to get their hands on some of it. It could be a customer, it could be an employee. So you have to provide a framework and be able to direct people. So it's not only what's important as far as goals and objectives, but what is the right knowledge to have for your company, your customers, and sort of keep them on track. It is not rigid, but if you can provide a framework that gives them the ability to learn, to be able to test. And I like the idea of testing because one of the things that I think is that we don't do in the corporate world is we don't practice together. And if you think about that, the ability to work together and do those things, I think that's important. But I think right at this point, if you are not empowering people at every level, then it's not whether you're going to be left behind. It's just when it's going to happen because other people are going to be able to iterate faster. They're going to be able to make distributed decisions, much faster. They know the customer better than you do if you're the CEO of a 1,500 person company. So you've got to be able to build that. But it only works if they trust you and you have the ability to communicate. And I think that's one of the things that people put a lot of things in place, but they don't. The communication part I think is also trust is there, but communication is at the core of it.
Yeah. I want to come back to communication. You said I think you said test together, and why would we want to do that? Why would we want to test together?
If you think about working together, if you in a lot of work today is project driven, so it's probably more of an issue today than before. The two of us are thrown on a team to do a project, and there's some other folks in there that we're thrown in. It's an important project, and so the fact that we've never really done anything together, because a lot of times there's a disparate group of people that get put together. We're going to spend probably the first 2 or 3 weeks just trying to figure out how do I say something to Brent so he understands it. How do I do this? And so the ability to create interactions I'll use the term training, is critical. And I think if you take it really to where I like to take it is under stressful situations, because everything goes fine and dandy when everybody's everything's going along really well. But how do people react under stress? If you look at a lot of project failures and I'll call it business issues, they revolve around people not knowing how to communicate, work with each other, understanding each other's strengths, areas of development.
Yeah, I think there's clearly advantages to being in a team from diversity of perspective and experience, and I like to say we've got eyes in the front of our head, but nowhere else. So we end up missing a lot of things, especially about ourselves. And when you said test together, it really struck me.
If you think about the military, and you take. I've been fortunate enough to know some people in the special operations side, and they test, and they train all the time. And the reason they do that is that they get to understand each other. They understand what they're good at, what they're not good at, gives them an opportunity to develop the areas that need to be developed. But under stress, they know exactly how people are going to behave. We don't do that in the corporate world. I mean, we're really very similar. The military and the private world, the corporate world is pretty much the same structure, different goals and objectives, things like that. But they train. And that's one of the things that when the chips are down or you've got to deploy, that's what makes the military so good, is that they've trained. We don't do that in the corporate world. So if you were to, something comes up, okay, this is the first crisis the company's had, and you whether you read Harvard Business Review, Forbes, anything, you'll hear about XYZ Corporation went through this crisis and the management team wasn't able to handle it. Mm-hmm. They never were tested. Mm-hmm. There's a great exercise, and I cannot remember the name of the author. But it's called Kill the Company. Have you ever heard of this?
I've observed it many times.
Yeah, no, there's actually training, but the whole thing is you get.
Most people don't need training for that.
Well, some people do it really well. But the idea is that you and I we're at a company and we get together with our peers, and we want to figure out how we're going to kill the company. In other words, we're a competitor. How do we put ourselves out of business?
Okay.
And so it's this process of thinking. It's sort of like a SWOT analysis.
Right. External threat. Yep.
But so you know everything about it. So how are you going to dissect it? And the idea is that when you go through that process, you're going to learn more about the company and hopefully learn more about the leaders.
So I think often we think of testing as a discovery. I want to discover something that may exist that's kind of static. Yeah. But when we test well, I think there's a couple things. One, we identify opportunities for growth or to shore up or vulnerabilities and things like that. I've always, as an educator, also believed that testing is kind of like when you're working out. When you're pushing the boundary, you're testing yourself to see where your boundaries are, but in doing so, you end up expanding your boundaries because there's this growth that happens when a good test happens. And so it's not just, I've discovered what already existed. There's opportunity to actually synthesize and to create more. And there's some approaches with education that when we do testing well, it becomes part of the whole education process, and learning happens in the testing. It's not just a tool for the teacher to know what a student has learned. It actually becomes a learning environment in that testing. And so I think there's some great things in there. The other piece that the military does well in that is, if you think about what happens in, you don't just take a test and turn it in. The big thing about it is you grade it and you review it and you look at the results and you understand what did we do good on, what did we not do good on.
Yeah. After action report.
And we talked earlier about iterating. And I think if we skip this step, which is, okay, we did something, let's look at it and actually see what the results were. To evaluate, we so often skip that simple step. We finish a project. The other one's already behind. It's already late. So let's skip the debrief. It's already happened, so we don't need to do the debrief. Let's go on to the next one. And then we end up doing a few extra iterations because we didn't learn the lessons from the last one, and so that's I think where the parallel of, if we test well, if we evaluate well, there's so much, and I'm not going to throw a percentage on it, but it's significant. So much of our learning and our growth happens in that space where we pause for a second, and okay, we prototyped or we did something, we finished something. What did we learn? How did we grow? Did we extend, or things like that? So.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think to me in a very simple way that I look at it is if you and I look back at memories, memorable things, we don't look back and go, I remember one Thursday when I sat around and watched TV all afternoon and did that, right? It's what are the stories we tell?
There I was.
We got lost in the woods,
So there I was.
and the bear was chasing me. All right, but I think that's one of the things. If you look at my belief, is human nature is, we remember the things where we're tested, and it could be running a marathon. It could be, you get lost in the woods. It can end up being tested. I think those are the things. You're right. It's that growth, and there's some neuroscience behind all of that. You hear about post-traumatic stress, but there's the other side, which is post-traumatic growth. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't talk about that. And you see people go through it. You see organizations go through it. There's tons of stories of companies that almost went out of business, and they came back stronger. Apple is a great one, right? Yeah. That was they were almost in flames, and they learned. Steve Jobs is a good example. He learned, he changed. If you mm-hmm. read about him, he was somebody that adapted, morphed, and learned over his career. And I think the thing that's hard, and this goes back to this environment about success, or if you call it completion, if there isn't this struggle, or you're trying to create tension between the existing structure and maybe destructive innovation, maybe at the extreme end, or just innovation. People don't want to do that because it gets them out of their comfort zone. An overused term, but it's very true. I think you've got to be able to go in and, as a leader in today's environment, going back to the leadership piece, is I think you have to go in and be, number one, you have to be very thoughtful about what you do. Don't just follow some prescribed formula that you see. Understand your organization, understand deeply the capabilities of it at the people level, and then go through a series of objectives, goals, exercises, whatever you call it. You want to stretch. You don't want the rubber band to break, but you want it to stretch. And you build resiliency in the employees. And if you do that, then you have resiliency in the organization. And I don't think people want to do that because it's work. It's a lot of work. I personally think it's fun, but I think I may be in the minority.
You're one of the weird ones, right?
That's
kind of like the people that walk into a gym and think that's going to be fun.
Yeah,
crazies, yeah. Right? Well, we're coming to the end of this episode. We've got another one coming up, and I want to hit on the importance of communication, and even some of we started off talking about how leadership is having to navigate a lot more change, mm-hmm. Bigger change, faster change. I want to talk more about that and anything else out of that big old wise Mike Morehouse head and experience.
It is a fat head at times.
It is. So thanks for joining us. I hope you come back and check out the next episode. There's going to be some great stuff to talk with Mike Morehouse about. Thank you for listening to A Leader's Journey.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of A Leader's Journey podcast. If you enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up and remember to subscribe to our channel.